Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that
whether it's been through the news, movies, or games, you've definitely seen it before.
Wokeism. It's seemingly everywhere, but at the same time, it's nowhere.
Woke is to be inclusive.
As creative directors aim toward being more inclusive and representative of minority groups, the idea of wokeism and the complexity it's gained has seemed to obscure that goal. So what is the best way to properly implement it into the media?
Well, its meaning has kind of been distorted, I feel, in the same way that, like, it's kind of just a buzzword now that you throw at something you don't really like.
In today's world, the term woke has been saturated by so many differing political opinions that its meaning has essentially been reduced to nothing. In its origin, this was not the case. In the background of social justice, the term originated in the early 20th century during the fight for equal rights and privileges for African Americans.
The whole idea behind woke, and I think why a lot of people aren't able to like pinpoint exactly what it means, is because when someone wants to phrase, like shorten it and explain to someone what woke means, it will sound racist to a lot of people.
The term "stay woke" meant to stay aware of the issues affecting African Americans, even if they weren't affecting you or anyone you knew. The term was first used by Huddy Ledbetter on the radio in 1938.
I advise everybody to be a little careful when they go along through that, but stay woke, keep their eyes open.
Unused following the end of the civil rights movement, its popularity spiked again in 2012 with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. As the movement progressed, the word became an umbrella term, with its meaning growing to encompass issues that were affecting all marginalized groups, not just African Americans. Then, in 2016, the meaning of the term seemed to change again, with it picking up a more negative, derogatory connotation and being used when referring to anything with a left-leaning political agenda. The 2016 presidential election goes down as one of the most polarizing elections in American history, where both candidates had very different opinions on the term woke. The landscape of the film industry did not help either. Films like the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot featured a lead cast made up of solely women and marginalized groups.
But I actually came out like, this was my face when I was watching the movie.
It's pretty accurate. It's fairly accurate.
What the
Then, in December of 2017, the powder keg finally exploded with the release of the most politically polarizing film of all time, Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
You taste that? Tastes like close-minded, whiny fanboy tears.
The Last Jedi single-handedly split the Star Wars fandom in half, split the internet in half, and ignited a culture war within entertainment. On one side of the discourse, a single term was used to describe the film.
Was Luke Skywalker made a coward because of the woke agenda? Well, a lot of fans believe the answer would be yes.
Yes, it is woke, 100%. And yes, I don't like it. It was more or less like the old ways are out. This new generation is a new generation of, empowered young females and minorities.
It was here when the term was spun into what it's largely referred to today, inserting a political message someplace it didn't belong. For example, companies pretend to be invested in a political message while simultaneously doing things that contradict that message. What's even more mind-blowing is that people who use the term the most are never able to agree on its actual meaning.
Let me just start with this whole thing about woke. We all know what woke means. Being woke means never having to say you're sorry.
Woke means never letting anyone say they're sorry.
Woke is racist.
Big woke means equity, diversification, gender, and racial disparities.
This wokeness that's happening at Madison's house and Jefferson's house, where all they do is talk about slavery.
Wokeism is about murdering fun.
You know what woke means? It means you're a loser.
Woke madness, now it's drag queens and children and church.
The anti-wokeism movement has also brought a great deal of controversies for the latest in entertainment, with several of them occurring each year. You've already heard about The Last Jedi, but you've probably heard about these others as well. The 2023 remake of The Little Mermaid features an African-American woman as the lead role, when she was white in the original movie. This year's Barbie movie was perceived by many to preach an anti-male agenda. Though it's not even out yet, and won't be for another year, the remake of Snow White has already gotten into a ton of controversy, from somehow is doing the same thing as The Little Mermaid, taking a character who was previously strictly white, and in this case, clearly established to be so, and casting Latina actress Rachel Zegler in the role, who has specifically stated her disdain for the original work.
I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again. So I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years when I was doing this. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. So we didn't do that this time. It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut, who knows?
Whichever side of the fence you're on with these controversies is up to you. But one thing nobody can deny is that as the years progress, these controversies have worked their way more and more into the mainstream, this year having them being more prominent than ever. These controversies have gotten so big that they've caught the attention of the US government, particularly in Florida. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, known for his Stop the Wrongdoings to Our Kids and Employees, or Stop Woke bill, bans the teaching of critical race theory. Critical race theory, or CRT, is another heavily debated topic with confusing definitions, but the Associated Press describes it as a way of thinking about America's history through the lens of racism. A handout created by Florida's government also says the bill bans hiring woke CRT consultants. Another bill passed by his administration is House Bill 1557. Supporters call it the Parental Rights and Education Bill, but opponents call it the Don't Say Gay Bill. That name is misleading, as the bill does not actually ban the use of the word gay. Instead, it bans instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity. The bill was originally only applicable for kindergarten through 3rd grade, but it was later changed to kindergarten through 12th grade. Wokeism has been mentioned in interviews with DeSantis as well, where he gives his own definition.
Woke is a form of cultural Marxism. It's about taking individuality, merit, and achievement and subordinating that to a political agenda based on identity politics. It is effectively displacing the truth in favor of ideology. And I think it's important that we fight against that because our society does need to be rooted in truth. Don't tell me that a man can get pregnant and expect me to believe that. That is not true, and we can't govern our society based on things that are not true. Second, when that ideology takes hold of institutions, it corrodes the institutions and it produces bad results. For example, when you have woke overtake parts of the economy with things like ESG, they attack energy, they attack other things. The average person ends up poorer as a result of that. When woke overtakes education, you get indoctrination and students end up performing worse as a result of that. When you have ideological prosecutors get into office in cities like San Francisco, they stop prosecuting criminals. The inmates run the asylum. The average person ends up less safe as a result of that. Every jurisdiction in this country that has indulged in this type of leftism, city or state, has failed. How do I know that? Because people that are fleeing are coming to my state in Florida and they're telling me the story about it. So this is not just an academic debate. It's, do we want policy based on tried and true principles, enduring principles that have made our country great? Or are we going to go on some ideological joyride, let people out of prison, do this, do that, and see our quality of life be destroyed? Woke needs to die.
One could argue that making the decision of whether a political message fits into a story or not limits creative freedom during writing. Some of the best works out there are so good because they have a message that was effectively put into the story that would normally be considered unconventional for the message it's trying to tell the audience. The original 6 Star Wars films made by George Lucas at face value seemed to be typical space adventure stories, but in actuality, Lucas wrote them as an allegory for the Vietnam War and how democracies turn into dictatorships. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka features a man who wakes up as a bug and explores the theme of struggling to find and express your identity in the modern world. However, many of the best parallels for the woke ideology featured in literary works is in Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. The novel features a communist party dubbed the Brotherhood, which was taken from Ellison's own experiences with the Communist Party in the 1930s. The final chapter of the novel features a riot in which the people of Harlem are fighting against each other, burning buildings and destroying everything they've built up. It's implied that the Brotherhood planned this riot to sacrifice the people of Harlem for the greater good. From the beginning, the plan was to help the people of Harlem see the light when they were actually tearing the people apart, making them turn on each other. Even people like Raz the Destroyer, who led a group of people against the Brotherhood and tried to get those on the inside to leave, ended up falling victim to the Brotherhood's schemes in Harlem. This same phenomena can be observed when we look at the Black Lives Matter riots and looting after George Floyd's tragic death in early 2020. Several people who were against the movement on the inside tried to tear it all down by committing these crimes in order to gain power over everyone else around them. The problem with woke portrayals in media is that most corporations that release films, games, and TV shows preach them in a politically acceptable way, trying not to offend anyone. While this might not seem like a big deal, it results in companies not doing anywhere near enough to truly make an impact and open the eyes of people who are consuming their entertainment. The corporatization of minority representation in media has led to the exact opposite effect of what minority representation was initially intended to do. Writing truly compelling stories and selecting characters that deliver the story best, no matter their race, should be the main goal. However, many creative directors have simply included minority actors in their projects for their own representative gain. Writers need to preach messages and choose actors who they believe in to tell their story. One of the best examples of this is 2017's Get Out. The film pulls no punches with its message, coming out as a satirical horror comedy about a man who gets hypnotized by a white family who tries to take control of his body, while being a commentary on the idea of wokeism and how people in the modern day obsess over their materialistic idea of marginalized groups, but not what they actually are. The reason Get Out is so powerful in the modern day, while still preaching such an extremely political and some would even say controversial message, is because the film treats its audience with intelligence and truly makes them question whether their treatment of those around them has been appropriate or not. The ideas created in the film can be related back to Invisible Man, with how Brother Jack, or the Brotherhood as a whole, attempts to control the narrator and use his lack of awareness to benefit themselves. This can be seen when Brother Jack writes the narrator an anonymous letter saying, "Do not go too fast," which emphasizes that it is still a white man's world and the invisible man will never catch up with a white man. He's only led to believe he can. While the prominence of wokeism differs depending on who you ask, it is still prevalent in the media, and there are too many examples to name. For years, companies have been preaching various progressive messages to the people living in the US while censoring it in other countries to avoid hurting profits. In 2018, Disney covered Chadwick Boseman's face in a Chinese version of the poster for Black Panther. And in 2023, Sony cut out every LGBT-focused side quest for the Middle Eastern version of Spider-Man 2, while the director of the game preached to audiences how important the message of the quests were to society as a whole.
I wrote a letter to the people who reviewed Spider-Man 2 and basically begged them by saying, please do the quests in the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app and the ones related to Brooklyn Visions Academy. Those little stories really mean a lot to me because it shows the world doesn't need to be ending, or you don't just need to fight a giant sand person in order to be a hero.
Other companies like BlackRock, an investment management company, continue to invest heavily into corporations that push political messaging to the forefront of their creative works, forcing their hand in including diverse casts and obvious left-leaning political messaging.
Most US banks are controlled by BlackRock. BlackRock owns all the major pharmaceutical companies. BlackRock owns most of the mainstream media, and BlackRock oversees roughly 10% of all stocks traded worldwide. And this company is now taking over governments. All of this has allowed BlackRock to amass $10 trillion in assets. Yes, trillion. BlackRock is worth half of America's total GDP. It's so crazy that the US and Chinese government now rely on BlackRock to escape recessions, with BlackRock's founder and CEO now sitting on the boards of the influential Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum. In the words of Henry Kissinger, whoever controls the money controls the world, and no other company in history has had this much global influence.
People also invest in companies based on their ESG score, which ranks companies based on how politically active and attentive they have been to the world's issues. This is why every year in June, companies change their profile pictures to a rainbow variation of their original logo to celebrate Pride Month. but won't change their logo in the Middle East since they know doing so will affect their profits from those people. Corporations will hire people to push their political message to gain support instead of hiring them to think for themselves, just to have power over the world and make sure their message is the most loudest and the most clear. However, not even those extremely critical of woke ideology are safe from the crutches of it. As stated earlier, many people believe that the movement is a virus upon our culture and that any form of representation of a marginalized group in media is forcing a political message down their throat, bringing in the plethora of controversies listed earlier. This, of course, is the intention of these corporations, to divide society in half and make both sides burn each other to the ground, to distract everyone from the real virus on society. The corporations in the background pulling the strings. This all parallels to the character of Raz the Exhorter in Invisible Man. Raz is set up to be one of the major antagonists of the story, who is always fighting against the Brotherhood and even attacks many people who are a part of it, calling them traitors. But during the riot in Harlem, towards the end of the story, it's revealed that even Raz himself was a victim of the Brotherhood's schemes when a spear is thrown at his mouth, closing it shut. Invisible Man has too many parallels of the ideology of wokeism to name. They are one of the biggest reasons the novel is more relevant than ever to our culture today. With corporations and groups like the Brotherhood existing in the world around us, people should closely examine the media to get the whole story. By simply calling something woke, people are not seeing the point, which leads one to question, should the word even be used? With all the issues surrounding the word woke, it still has power. Using it could instantly have people support it or absolutely detest it. It depends on their beliefs. So when examining media, especially if it's woke, people should analyze it closely. If not, it will divide us even more. These questions do not just have one singular answer, as they can be interpreted in different ways. So we must be able to educate ourselves and establish our viewpoint on the issues at hand. And then we can go about solving these problems in media and the everyday world.